we leave lasting impressions on people. As I read comments on my blog and direct messages that I get on social media, you can really impact someone's life in a great way by just giving them the information that they needed, and it works out and it does something for them. And so I love that feeling. I'm obsessed and I want to keep delivering that.
That was Brandi Crawford, and this is episode number 181 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, how are you doing today? I'm so glad you joined me today. I'm Marley. I'm with the blog Namely Marley, and I'm also your host of the Chopped Podcast. What do we do here? Well, we are talking about all things food, but also blogging. So we put those two together and we talk about food blogging. Today is such an exciting episode because I have Brandi Crawford of the site Stay Snatched. She's back on the show. You know, I have to tell you, I'm lucky enough to have Brandi here in Kansas City, and we get together from time to time. And let me tell you, it is just so inspiring and motivating. I can just not say enough about having people that you know in the industry who are doing the hard work, and it just inspires you. We all have down days, we all have great days. And so to be able to share that with other people really brings you along. And I have learned a lot, as I said in the last episode, about mindset and how it makes such a big difference. And, you are like the people that you spend the most time with. So having some people who are super positive that you can spend some time with, it can really make a difference. And talking about making a difference, Brandi and I are talking about something that is so amazing. It is going to blow your mind. Are you ready? We are talking about keywords. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking keywords. How is that mind-blowing? But I know that you've heard other people talking about keywords. And the thing is, this conversation is a game changer. Why? Because everyone talks about the value of keywords and how it can help you move up in the ranks in search engine positioning. You even heard Nora Taylor of the site Nora Cooks. She is back in episode number 173, and she said keywords is one of the things she buckled down on early in her blogging career. Within a year or two of starting her blog, her traffic was skyrocketing. But look, what I've learned is you can't just go willy-nilly at this. It takes training. There's expertise involved, and you have to have a keyword strategy. All of this is really important because it gets super confusing and technical and complicated. And, the more complex something is, the easier it is for things to get super messy and super confusing. But guess what? Brandi and I, we put our heads together yet again, and we're offering a webinar to help you master keywords for your site. We received so many rave reviews after our first webinar in February. We called it Grow because it was focused on growing your audience and using tools like Google Analytics and some amazing spreadsheets to help you track your progress and know your audience. It was amazing. Brandi shared screens of how she uses Google Analytics and how she exports the data and how she has a spreadsheet that helps her track, the changes that are happening from her audience and how she helps her understand her audience and what kind of content to deliver as a result. And then I shared spreadsheets also and how I'm tracking, updating old content. It was amazing. We had a really great time. We made friends. We also were able to deliver spreadsheet templates, and we just got a lot of really great feedback after that. If you're interested in learning more about how you can purchase that webinar on demand and get access to those templated spreadsheets, just go to chopped.academy/grow. So the participants of that first webinar loved it so much, and they really felt the value of the information that we delivered. And so then they asked for more information on keywords. But Brandi and I wanted to make sure we could deliver something amazing before we decided to launch this second webinar. So Brandi and I talked more about the webinar and keywords and how that keywords can impact your site. And it's such a great conversation, and I think you're going to get a lot of value just from this podcast alone. It's really very informative and helpful. So let's get straight to it. Here's my featured discussion with Brandi Crawford. Hey everyone, I'm so happy to have back on the show today Brandi Crawford. She's of the site Stay Snatched. Hey Brandi, welcome back to the Chop Podcast.
Thanks, Marley. It feels good to be back on.
Yeah, I think you might be quickly becoming one of the most popular return guests.
I think so too.
I always get good feedback from the show when you're here.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Well, I mean, I feel the same way too. We happen to live in the same city, so I get to see you in person, and I always feel so inspired after I talk with you.
I know. I love our little chats. It feels good to have a blogger friend
Yes,
right
I think
here
it's so important. I
in
don't know if
town.
everybody has that, but if you don't, I really recommend cultivating it because I will say, just, you and I get together from time to time, and every time we do, I leave feeling more inspired to do the things, just to, I don't know, to do the work, I guess.
Yes, same. Same
I'm so
here.
glad to hear that. It makes me happy. So, we've had a lot going on. You were on the show in February, and we were talking then about, tips on how to grow your food blog. And a lot of that is based on, you've had such great success. You've grown your site. And I really recommend for people who want to hear Brandy's story, especially the startup story about how you started your food blog and how it grew so quickly. I recommend that you go back to episode 159 and also episode 171 just to hear more about Brandy and how she started her blog. It really is just such an inspiration. But here we are today, and I'm just curious, do you have any updates to share since the last time you were on the show?
Yeah, I do. So in February, I had recently quit my job. So I quit the November prior. So I feel like in February, I was still trying to get adjusted to, kind of just doing this full time, getting a schedule down. I
Yes.
still kind of felt like a chicken with my head cut off and not feeling like I was kind of doing things in an organized way and how I want to do them. So I just have since then created a schedule that it's kind of like batching, but it's not bulk batching by any means. So since then, I have a pretty streamlined weekly process that I go through. I shoot all of my recipes on Monday of the week. Sometimes I'll allow a recipe to spill over to Tuesday, but I try not to. My goal is to only spend time in the kitchen on Mondays, actually shooting recipes, and then the rest of the week I can have kind of in the office, getting the posts out, editing photos, planning for the next week, and then actually cooking on weeknights and doing recipe testing then. Because one thing I felt, especially during that February timeframe, I wasn't doing hardly any just freestyle cooking in my kitchen. My kitchen was only to work. And so since then, I've just gotten so much better about going back to old recipes and cooking old recipes, and then just cooking things that probably will never be on the blog, just throwing something together based on how it kind of tastes type thing. So just in terms of like self-care, I've been all over that and adjusting
Good.
to kind of just like a full-time blogging schedule. And in terms of like specific blog tasks in my regimen, I can't remember if I talked about Hrefs when we were here in February or not. I can't remember if I had just started using it or not, but I've been really heavily relying on Hrefs for a lot of my keyword planning and a lot of my post planning. There's so many tools in there. So recently I set a goal to just kind of dive in there once a week and kind of poke around because there's just so many powerful tools in terms of competitor research or even auditing your own site and things like that. So since February, I feel like I've really, really latched on to Hrefs
Yeah,
too.
you kind of turned me onto it. But I had another, one of my husband's clients really recommended it too, and I was just wow, blown away by all the things that it offers. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with it.
I know.
And so
I think for two people who kind of love data, that it's like jumping into this big bath of it, and it's wonderful. And like you say, I need to start doing what you're doing, and that is going in on a regular basis and just like, okay, what else can I learn from this tool? I know
mhm.
that there's a lot of meaning to some of the data that's in there that I'm not taking advantage of.
Oh yeah, same. And sometimes I don't get to it. I'd say my favorite things about it, once I create a post and I've got my target keywords, I put that into my rank tracker.
Uh-huh.
And then once or twice a week, I do go in every single week without a question and I check in on just posts that I'm curious about because it'll show you your ranking for those
Yes.
posts and if it's gone up and if it's gone down. And so if I'm kind of stalking new posts,
Yes.
then I love to go in there. I'm starting to notice that Google is just indexing content way faster than it used to as well. So I'm really loving to just go in there and see that something, even if it's ranking 60, that I wrote this last week and it's already at 60. Oh wow! And then
Yes.
with Ahrefs, you can see that so easily with
Ah,
just a few clicks of the screen.
that's
So I love it.
it's a great tip, Brandy, because I set up initially like this long list of rank tracking posts. So,
Hmm.
but they're kind of more of my evergreen content. I didn't
Hmm.
think about going in, each week, like if I just published a recipe to go in and put it in there too. That way it's a great way of just keeping track of what's going on with it.
It really is, and so I've tried to add that to my process once I've completed a post. It's
Yes.
actually more on my Friday, so I have a list of things that I do on Friday that are all, like, housekeeping things, and so that's one
Nice.
of the things to add that the posts from this previous week, because another thing I did do this year that I didn't really do last year as well as I did this year was planning for Q4 content, and so I've been creating it's September now, I've been creating Q4 stuff since June, and so I've been obsessed with trying to see if the Q4 stuff that I've been creating these last 3 months, if they're actually ranking and if they're going to be in a great position once kind of November and December craziness hits.
Okay, so I
So,
want to hear what you're talking about with that. We'll just diverge here for a few minutes.
yeah.
But do when you say that, do you mean like you were publishing content in June that you really wanted to be full-fledged and out there and ready for October?
Yep. I made a pumpkin pie in June or July. I didn't let it hit the first page of my site, but
I
it
see.
was published. Yep. I've been
Nice.
making
So you
all
back
kinds of
published
stuff.
it.
Uh huh.
Yes.
Just so that I wouldn't hit the first page.
I think this is kind of an interesting thing to point out for people because it would be tempting to wait until October to publish that, but then you don't, if it's not really out there and kind of gaining some steam, then it may not hit all that wonderful Q4 traffic.
Yep, and I think that that's the case. Like, I'm still gonna have some recipes that I'm making in October and probably even November that aren't going to get the full benefit of Q4 this year just because they're being published so late. Like they'll
Yes.
probably get a lot of traffic on socials and stuff like that, but in terms of Google, it'll be limited. And just because of time restraints or just because of, if I want to make some Christmas cookies and share them on the blog, I'm not going to wait till next year. I'm just going to, publish it October, November, and maybe next year I'll get the full Google benefit of it. But I didn't want to wait until the last minute only because I track my keywords and my rankings pretty closely, and it usually takes at least 2 to 3 months for most of my posts to get to the front page of Google. And I've
Yes.
got some that take off super quick, like, oh man, this year I've got a few unicorns that have taken off within 3 weeks to a month, and but that's not going to be every single post.
I
And
love it. And
so
just to clarify for people, unicorn is a post that gets to the top 3, is that right?
yeah, or just unicorn in general just means something that never happens, kind of an anomaly.
Yes.
So that's kind of what I refer to a lot of life stuff as unicorn stuff that doesn't happen all the time. So
Yes.
this year I've just had some posts that took off really, really quickly after publishing them, but I would say my average is 3 months if they're gonna take off. I've got some that just die, but the
Yes.
ones that do take off, it usually takes like 3 months at
And
least.
I know we're all shooting for that top page, but it does feel for me, I feel pretty good when it gets in like the top 15.
Yeah, once it gets in the top 15, I get a little more comfortable because 'cause I'm
Yes.
like, "I can get there.
Yes.
I can get there. I can get there."
I mean, because you're on the home stretch at that point.
Mhm.
But sometimes it feels a little bit like the weight analogy too, like when if you've been trying to lose weight and the first 50 pounds are pretty easy and the last 10
Yep,
can be really hard. So sometimes, the things you have to pull out of the hat to get a post to the top page,
exactly.
especially if it's a competitive keyword, it's harder.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just the waiting game. Like,
Yes.
I've got another post that I almost forgot about it because it never got to kind of the front page, but then for some reason, I feel like 10 months, almost a year later, and now I'm in the top 3, and so it's something that is over a year old, and I'm like,
Yes.
"Ah, you like it now. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks."
Thank you very much. It's like
But yeah, so sometimes it's just waiting and
that's
seeing.
true, and so for me, I have this tendency to wanna continue to go in and fiddle with it, but I do think there are times that you've gotta let it simmer for a little bit?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep, you can only beat the dead horse so many times
I love this.
and
So,
move on.
we did a webinar together in February on the topic of growth, and it was really about, tracking your growth as a food blogger with tips and strategies and even spreadsheets to make it all happen. And I think another thing that you did this year that was pretty awesome is that you actually went to some food blogging conferences and you talked with people who had actually participated in those and they gave you some feedback. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it was awesome. So if anybody's listening and you came up to me and said hi and introduced yourself, thank you, because it was a really great feeling to kind of hear that people got so much out of the webinar. People loved the spreadsheets. They were sharing with me how they were using them and kind of their takeaways. I talked a little bit about my email marketing strategy, and I had two people say that they had implemented some of my tips from that and they were loving it. And so the feedback that I got was amazing. But the first question that everyone asked me after sharing their thoughts was, when is the next one? When is the next one? And so during the webinar, I felt like I could have talked for days. And
Yes.
one of the ringing questions I feel like we were getting during our Q&A portion was about keyword research. And that particular webinar wasn't focused on keyword research, but it kept coming up.
We're touching
So
on it. Yes.
yeah, it definitely sounds like it's a hot topic.
Yeah, so that is the topic of our next webinar, which is, I think we're calling it,
Smart.
yes, smart keyword strategies for food bloggers. That's it. Yes, smart keyword strategies. Because I keep hearing, this drives me crazy about whatever we're learning about, if it's email or if it's SEO or food photography or whatever. I hear, or content creation is another one where you hear people who just say, you just need to develop quality content, but then they don't go into the
Mhm.
specifics of that. And that's kind of what I feel like has been happening with keywords lately is people have been saying a lot about, oh, you just need to do keywords, but they don't talk about what that means. And so I love that you and I put our heads together and we're like, we need to do a webinar on how to do keyword research and just keywords in general for food bloggers.
I agree, because and I totally agree with what you said about people give the cliche
Yes.
answer, "Oh, right for your audience," which you 100% should do, but there's several sentences that you can follow that up with
Yeah.
to kind of solidify that as an accurate statement. But just being a part of even Facebook groups now, I'm starting to see people take it a step further and ask the powerful questions after the keyword research question. The common one that I see all the time is, well, what keyword volume are you targeting? A lot of people just don't know where to
Yeah.
start. And a question like, what keyword volume are you targeting? That's a great question. And so I think that people just need kind of a baseline of where to go and kind of what they should be looking for so that they can form a strategy. Because if you don't even know what to look for, then you can't even form a strategy of what you need to do.
Yes, and if you put yourself out there in a, I'm just trying to say, like, if you put yourself out there on a keyword that's got a lot of, let's say it's 20, 40,000, and it's highly competitive, um, you're probably not going to be very successful if you don't know how to do these keyword strategies, and as a result then you're going to feel super discouraged. So that's
Yeah. Yeah.
not a good way to go about it.
Yep. I agree.
So, Brandy, I thought I would be a little vulnerable here and tell everybody what I used to think was keyword research. This is so hilarious
Hmm.
because I used to think, like, let's say I was planning out a post and I would go to Google, I'd open up a window and I would search for that post. So, an example I'll give you would be something pretty ridiculous, that like cheesy peanut butter cookies. And I would go, and let's say there would probably be a million search results as a result of typing that into the Google window I had open. And if I did a post on that and I ended up in position number one, I would think I was successful. I was thinking, God, I got that nailed. Look at this. But of course, it would bring no traffic in because nobody is searching for cheesy peanut butter cookies.
Exactly.
But in my mind, I had just mastered keyword research.
Right. Right. And I think a lot of people, maybe they're not doing that exact
Yes.
same thing, but they're doing something
Yeah.
similar to that.
Right. We all have little things that we've picked up over the years that, who knows, maybe something was, right to do a long time ago, and it's evolved, or it's possible just, we're just not doing things correctly. Because once I learned about tools like Ahrefs, or, there's all kinds of KW Finder, those kinds of things that can help you better understand how competitive a keyword is. That's actually really good keyword research, and it's a great way for food bloggers to, I don't know, like figure out where they fit in that blogging, in their particular niche, and what kind of competitive terms they can go for.
Yep, I agree. And I think it also just boils down to kind of having a central understanding of kind of how SEO
Yeah,
works, how keyword research works too, because if you have a tool but you don't really understand the process, you're not going to be able to use the tools effectively.
right.
Because a comment that I still see a lot is that people are saying, well, I put my keyword into Yoast. Why isn't Google giving me traffic for my keyword? And so I think people think it's as simple as putting their keyword into a plugin on their site and that Google's magically going to start ranking you for that. But there's so many other factors that go into it kind of beyond that, and you can't work in a vacuum. You have to
Yes.
take a more holistic approach, and I think that that's what's kind of lacking, just in a lot of people that don't understand it aren't really taking an holistic approach to keyword research. Because I know you and I talked about like your vegan brownies
Yes.
recipe. And so I think that sometimes people just get so focused on, I need to rank for vegan brownies. And they just talk about vegan brownies in their recipe. But a lot of my top posts, out of my top 10, I'd say five or six, I'm not only ranking for like a vegan brownies, but I'm ranking for like vegan recipes or vegan desserts or vegan chocolate or something like that. Like you don't want to just rank for just the vegan brownies. You've got to kind of do a lot more to your strategy so that you're getting the category keywords too, because that's where kind of the gold mine is. You don't, at least I don't want to just rank for just the one thing. You want to be able to rank for that one thing and then have Google say, oh, she's an expert in this. So we need to show her in these other categories as
And
well.
that's sort of, what is that exercise that you would do? Maybe it's association where you would sit down on a page and you would write something down in the middle, and then all these other things would come up, you know? And so
Exactly, and
that's,
that's actually a part of my
is it
process.
really? Oh,
Yeah, because I kind of have layers,
yes.
or maybe layers isn't, I think layers is a good way to describe it. Like for the vegan brownie, like let's say vegan brownie is what I want my recipe to
Uh-huh.
be, but I also want to be an expert in vegan dessert recipes or vegan chocolate recipes. So
Yes.
kind of working your way through that to see, to kind of demonstrate how you can show yourself as an authority and knowledgeable in kind of all of those areas so that you're capitalizing on keywords in several different ways. And that's what's going to scale your
I
traffic.
love that. And another thing, I know I've heard you say this several times, that we want to work smarter, not harder. And the
Yeah.
good news is that you would have the information if you do the keyword research properly. You have the information to you in front of you to know how much work it's going to take to, if your goal is to get to the front page of this particular, if it's a very competitive search term, or even if it's not super competitive, but the people who are at the top are, these huge sites, you're gonna have
Hmm.
to put a little bit more into it, and so I feel like just going into that with that knowledge, I think, is important.
Yeah. Knowledge and kind of trusting your gut.
Yes.
And I think that that's what helps me
Mm,
be successful at this process because I'm the type of person I'll try anything once and I'll try it over and over again. And if I have to pivot, I will. And so that's one of the things I think when it comes to SEO and probably blogging in general, you have to be willing to adapt and be willing to kind of try new things. Everything doesn't have an exact blueprint. And so you kind of just have to kind of test some things out until you kind of get into the rhythm of what is going to work for you.
yeah, I love that story that you told. I'm trying to think of, maybe it was in our February discussion where you had actually produced a post in, let's say it was like maybe a year ago this time, and it
Hmm.
just took off, and it was a topic that maybe Google didn't show it as very competitive at all, but you saw it as
Hmm.
something that it was going to be because it was a topic that was trending.
Yep, it's still my top 3 posts.
Oh,
So it was
God,
a
that's
post when I
great.
did when I did the keyword research, I think it had 600 for search volume,
Wow.
but I was like, "I make this recipe all the time, it's so good, I know my audience is gonna love it, I'm gonna do it." And so, it took a while. I think I published it in October, I didn't start getting traffic from it until January, so I think right before that webinar.
Wow.
And so right now, it's still my top 3 posts every single day.
And see, that took a little bit of a leap of faith, right? Because 600 is not really going to make a ding in your traffic, but yet it
Yep,
is now.
yep, and I think that 'cause I see so much discussion about, "Oh my god, SEO is so trendy now. I don't wanna write for SEO, or I don't wanna create content based on SEO," and I kinda just wanna make it clear that I do that, but I don't either. So, my process is as I get ideas, I keep a running list of them. I'm not actively going out there and saying, "What are people Googling? Let me go make that."
Right.
No, it's ideas as they kind of come in my head. I get requests from my audience all the time, and I put those on a list, but then I do the keyword research to see, is this something that has good volume? And if it doesn't have a lot of volume, is it worth me still doing? Am I that passionate about it? And so I've kind of got an 80-20 split now, where there are recipes that either they're super competitive and I know there's probably no way in heck I'm going to rank for it, but I feel like it needs to be on my website. So I'm making it anyway. Or there are things that no one's searching for this, but I'm passionate about it enough where I feel like it needs to be on my website, where I still make it. And
Yes.
so this was kind of an example of that, where I'm like, man, there's not a lot of search volume for it. I personally think that's going to change. And I think that this recipe needs to be on my site. I'm going to do it. And so I did it, and it's a top 3 recipe now.
Wow. Talk about trusting your gut. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a post that's
Mhm.
kind of the on the second version of what you're talking about, where nobody is searching for vegan peanut butter balls, and yet it brings in a lot of traffic for me, especially in the holidays. It's not. It used to be
Mhm.
that that would bring me traffic in year round, but now it really is focused, in the on the holiday period, and so I
Mhm.
just think there are examples like that of where I love the 80-20 rule, because that way 80% of the time you can really do your keyword research and really, purposely choose those posts that are going to bring in traffic. And then 20% bring in, focus on posts that are just, like things that you say, like, I got to have this recipe on my site.
Yeah, like, there's some stuff where I'm like, someone shouldn't come to my site and know my mission and know what I stand for, and this recipe's not there. And so this last year, I've been just kind of taking that stance where that needs to be on my site no matter what. And I feel like I do at least a couple of them every month.
Oh, that's
So
great.
it's been really refreshing.
I mean, I think that kind of respects the fact that people come to your site for different reasons. Like, some people are coming from Google and they are searching for a particular recipe. And then other people are probably more return visitors that they just love you so much and they're just constantly coming to your site. So they're going to be looking for that recipe.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love it.
Yep, and it could take off on social, kind of like your peanut butter one
Yes.
takes off on Pinterest, so
Exactly, that's right. And then, there Pinterest is a whole other story. We could talk about that some other day, I guess, because, knowing
Mhm.
how things do on Pinterest, let me tell you, that's it's enough to drive you
Yeah.
crazy. I think I get it figured out, and then they change something.
Yeah, Pinterest is a whole 'nother
That's
beast.
exactly right. That's what I love. Personally, that's one of the reasons I like having learned more about SEO and doing that more, because it feels, sure, there are changes that go on with that as well, but it feels more constant, and I feel like SEO really is about serving your audience, and that's something that's kind of timeless.
Yeah, it really is. I think I love SEO so much because it's so
Yes.
analytical, and I don't think that, and so it's a challenge for me. And when I worked in corporate, I was always looking for challenging work to do. And so with SEO, because it does change so much, I feel like I'm challenged a lot. But to go back to your comment about writing for your audience and stuff like that, that cliche is true. Like, I think that it really holds true. If you're writing for your audience and you're answering the questions that they want the information for, then, you're only going to do well. Because there's some questions that I put in almost every post, because I know every single time I post this on Instagram, someone asks this question. Every single time I post it on Facebook, someone will ask this question. So even if no one's searching for the answers for those questions per Google, I'm still putting them in there because I know that my audience is going to ask
Yes.
this question. So just kind of serving them. One thing that I've seen a lot more in the last, I feel like maybe 10 months, maybe just this year, are the comments that I get from people saying, your post was so well written. It answered every
Aw.
question that I needed and stuff like that. And so that kind of goes a long way, because now, especially now I'm doing this full time, I'm spending so much more time writing up my posts, and I feel so good about them. I feel like they're really well researched, and I do feel like they really are kind of serving my
Yes.
audience. SEO aside, I do feel like, these are good posts, and these questions and answers are things that people are actually looking for and want to read.
What I like about that too is that I feel more proud of my posts. Honestly, I feel like SEO has helped me be more proud of my posts, because honestly, I do research to be able to answer some of the questions I believe people will have about the recipe. And
Mhm.
so,
Oh, yeah, I do that
yes,
too, and I think it's made me become a better cook,
yes,
a better
yep.
blogger, just a better authority in
That's
general.
exactly right.
And it's
It
fun.
is.
I think that it's fun because you're learning.
I remember in the webinar in February, I loved hearing you say, you talked about a minute ago about being competitive, and I'm like, yeah, she definitely is because you were talking about how sometimes even if it's a highly competitive term, you're going to go for it anyway because you know that you have just some tools you just know are going to help you get to the top, and I just love that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's one that I shot on Monday. That's actually it's in that boat that I was talking
Yes.
about. I think that it's competitive. I may not rank for it, but I've got actually some confidence that maybe I will. But then if I don't, then whatever. I need that recipe on my site. It kinda just goes back to what I was saying earlier. But it's all of it is a puzzle and a challenging game for me. And so I'm just really turned on by that. It might probably sounds really
No,
weird.
no, it doesn't. No, no, it sounds great. In fact, it kind of reminds me of this guy I used to work with that I would talk about the problems sometimes, like, "Oh, this is a problem," and he'd say, "No, no, it's not a problem. It's an opportunity or it's a challenge, but we don't need to call
Yeah,
it a problem. Let's call it something we can solve." And I love that.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Ah,
for
that's great,
sure.
and I also feel like, this to me is what I'm all about with what I love about sports too, is, like, it just teaches you this mindset because if you're constantly losing and failing, then it kind of inspires you to learn the skills of the sport better, and,
Mhm.
I feel like that's what we're saying here is, like, you actually enjoy the sport more when you learn the skills better, and that's how I feel about here, is, like, you once you learn these skills, it actually causes you to enjoy food blogging even more.
It does. Oh, it totally does. One thing that always sticks out with me for some reason is during our February, I think you said it on the podcast, not even during the webinar. During our February podcast, you mentioned how you had been auditing your site, auditing every post and going in and either no indexing posts that you didn't want Google to see or just beefing up older posts that could be
Yeah.
beefed up. And, you said you didn't want anything on your site that you were ashamed of. You had a way that you described it, or you wanted every single post to be a good
Yes.
post on your site. So since then, I've been thinking that, and I've gone into some old stuff, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I cannot believe this looks like this." Like, I didn't answer any questions in that post,
Yes.
and so just kind of taking that train of thought of, I want every single post to stand on its own on my site. I want it linking to the other things. I want everything to just be ready
Yeah.
for fresh eyes, ready to make a good recipe every single time they come to my site. And so every time I hit publish, that's kind of what I'm thinking about is this a good recipe? Have I answered everything? And you're not going to answer every
Sure.
single thing you could have, but have you made a decent effort to do so? And I just look at the difference in the post I was writing even a year ago when I was still doing really
Yeah.
well. And so there's just so much, value in learning and continuing to build on those skills, like you just
I don't
said.
think anybody could you could ever be bored as a food blogger because it feels like there's always something else to be doing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm never done. I'm never done with anything, I feel
I think what
like.
I said then was I'm trying to change my perspective and look at my blog as a store, and every post is a door. And, when
Mhm.
a storefront, they want when you walk in, they want to have a kinda, a branded entrance. Like if I go into Marshalls here or if I go into Marshalls in New York or whatever, it's got this feel to it, or Starbucks is the same
Mhm.
way. And that's what I'm shooting for on my site. I want to feel 100% confident about the recipe and how I've written about it, and I have a long ways to go, but I'm still working. I've got my spreadsheet and I'm tackling it.
Yeah, but I love that mindset because we leave lasting impressions on people. As I read comments on my blog
Yes.
and direct messages that I get on social media, you can really impact someone's life in a great way by just giving them the information that they needed and it works out and it does something for them. And so I love that feeling. I'm obsessed and I want to keep delivering
Oh,
that.
that's great. I'm so glad. See, this is examples of how we motivate and inspire each other.
I know.
Yes.
This is like our tea loft conversation
I
dates on a podcast.
Yes, exactly, and the thing I love is, like, with these webinars, I feel like I said, there's a lot of people talking in generality about how to go about things, but I feel like people need information on how they can do it right, and I'm not saying that there is one right way to do these things, but, we're sharing screenshots, we're actually going through we're gonna be, sharing examples of how we take a keyword and walking it through and how it looks on the post. I mean, I feel like these are the kinds of examples that really can make a difference for a person who's struggling to try to either figure it out or how to implement it.
I agree because as food bloggers, I think most of us are visual
Yes.
learners. Like we're probably just visual people in general, just by the
Yes.
nature of the business that we're in and the personalities that we have. And so it's one thing to hear somebody say something versus hear someone say something and you see them do it.
Right.
And so I would just love to walk, people through vegan brownies. Okay, this is actually what I do. I insert vegan brownies here.
Yes.
This is my process and how I actually put it into my post and kind of how I build my post. So to see it from start to finish, I think can be so
Yes,
valuable.
I agree. And another benefit for people who sign up for the webinar is that, as always, we have a spreadsheet to offer. And I have this spreadsheet that I'm just so in love with because you know, the keywords have been something that's fairly new to me, at least. That's obviously you can understand that it's taken me a while to kind of get on the bandwidth with it. And now that I am, I'm like obsessed with it. And so I created a spreadsheet to track individual posts and to see, I can actually track where it is and how much better it's doing now as a result. So I feel like those are things that, we were talking about examples of how you're doing the right thing and having a spreadsheet to help you track, and it actually even can graph so you can see the progress that your post has made over time. I just feel like that's so helpful too.
I love it. Yeah. For me, that's really motivating
Yes.
to see, okay, I'm putting in all this work and I am seeing some benefit.
Oh, I can't tell you how many times, Brandy, that I have gone to, when I go to Ahrefs and I'm doing some follow up on a post that I updated several months ago. And then I go to Ahrefs and I say, and it's only in position 37. And I'm like, ah, only 37. And then I go to my spreadsheet and I
Mhm.
realize it was in position 45. So it's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, this is something to be excited about because to me, 37 is nothing to really celebrate. But once you've realized it was in 45 and it's made all this progress, then I feel good about that.
Right. I
Yeah.
agree.
So I think having spreadsheets, obviously you and I are on the spreadsheet bandwagon and we love them. So we've got this spreadsheet that's just, it's plug and play, really easy. We've got all these complicated formulas in the background, but you don't have to touch those. These are, the spreadsheet is just really easy to operate. So that's, I think, another reason
Yeah.
doing things, being connected with other food bloggers and being in a webinar and doing these kinds of things, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and a spreadsheet will help hold you accountable. And it'll
Yes.
also allow you to not overwhelm yourself because just the idea of like even your project where you were going back and auditing your site and going through all of your posts, that's an overwhelming piece of pie to slice off. But I
Yeah.
love the idea with my spreadsheets, I chip away where I have, okay, this week I'm going to look at 10 posts, or I'm going to go in and check links on 10 posts, and I can check that
Yes.
off my spreadsheet and come back to it next week, as opposed to feeling like I have to do everything at once and diving down a rabbit hole and 4 hours have gone by, as opposed to, making it more manageable
Yes.
and making it way less overwhelming. And so that's what I really love about the spreadsheet system is that it's so easy to kind of just set things aside and chip away as you go because you'll get there.
Oh, totally. That is just so perfect right there because I think if you think you have to update everything today, you're just gonna, yeah,
Yeah,
you're also
you're
gonna
gonna get
throw
me
in the towel.
frustrated. Yep, and you're gonna say, "Okay, you know what? I'm not updating anything."
Y Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Forget about it. I'm just moving on. Plus, it also helps me realize, you and I have talked about this. There are some posts out there that no matter what work that you do on it, it's there. It's just really some are just harder to make a dent in, and so it makes me
Mhm.
go, okay, you know what? I'm just going to move on to another one that I can make a difference with.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. You're gonna be also talking about long tail keywords. I think that's a thing that people talk about a lot as well, and I'm looking forward to hearing you go into the specifics of that with everybody.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too. It kind of was like what I was talking about earlier, if we're staying on the vegan brownies, just making sure that you're not just targeting two keywords. Your keywords don't have to be your post title. You can rank for other things kind of related, and you should be trying to rank for those because getting a large volume of a combination of keywords in one post or getting traffic from one post that has a different varying volume of keywords, it's just it's awesome. All of my
Yes.
top posts are the top post for that reason. Sometimes I don't even rank for what I thought I was going to rank for. I
Ah,
rank for 10 different combinations of other things that are related, but
yes.
it's probably not the number one thing that I was targeting, but it was something else that I was targeting.
I love that. And also in our spreadsheet on tracking keywords is also something else that's, I think, pretty important and connected to all of this, which is internal linking.
Hmm.
So being able to track internal linking to specific posts, I think can make a difference with your, where that post is doing as far as search results.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
I love it. So finding ways to be more competitive with competitive search terms, I think is just it's a key to success. And also, finding those areas where you can find some keywords that are not as competitive that you can rank highly for. These are all the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about in addition to how you can use keywords to be like we say, to be work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
if you are interested in this webinar, we would love to have you. It's going to be presentation and time for us to share screens, but we're also going to allow plenty of time for questions to make sure we go over, any questions anybody might have. And everybody who participates will get a copy of the templated spreadsheet so they can use it for themselves. And each person who registers, their name will be thrown into a drawing, and we'll be drawing two names out. One will get an hour of consulting from me, another will get an hour of consulting from Brandi. How cool is that?
Awesome. I love
Yeah,
it.
I love it too. So if you feel frustrated with the topic of keyword research and wishing that you knew more, and beyond just even knowing more, just how you can actually implement that into your food blogging strategy, then we would love to have you. The webinar is going to take place on October 24th at 1 p.m. Central.
Yay.
Yes. And so I would like for you to go to chopped.academy/smart, SMART, smart. And you can sign up there. It's a simple registration process. And then we'll be looking forward to, emailing you and talking with you soon and actually being on the webinar. October 24th is going to be here just like that, isn't
I
it, Brandon?
feel like it. Yes, it's like right around the corner.
Yeah.
September's almost over, and I can't believe that.
I can't either. It's just amazing. But this is the big time of year for food bloggers. So I think the sooner we can get keywords going and active, I think that there's just, honestly, I do feel like I jokingly referred to you that this is the keys of the kingdom. But I do feel like that's what's going on here. This is the secret sauce that can really turn a food blog, from good to great.
I think so. And just gauging from our last webinar, all of the questions that we were getting in the Q&A were about keywords. Well, most of them
Yes.
were about keywords. And so that's the other thing to kind of reemphasize mentioning actually being there for the Q&A portion. I feel like our Q&A portion, I know we could have gone longer. So just how valuable that Q&A portion was, hearing what people's questions were and getting to dive into those, that's an excellent component of joining this webinar.
Oh, it's so true. I do feel like oftentimes food bloggers, we're all out here independently trying to figure this stuff out on our own. And to be in a group like that where we can ask questions and get honest, real answers and see other people actually doing the work, I think is just huge.
Yep, I agree. And it doesn't have to stop there. I know Sarah Cook was on our last webinar, and I still chat with her almost
Yes.
every other day. And so she has a huge nugget of information that I mentioned during the webinar that she took away. And the next day she followed up with me and asked some follow up questions, and we worked through it. She's since implemented that strategy, and she's seen so many posts take off. And so you don't have to just limit your questions to the Q&A. I'm still here. I'm still around. Marley's still here. Marley's
That's
still
right.
around. You may get a friend out of it. And so she and I talk we definitely talk every week.
Oh,
And so it's so comforting to hear kind of her story about implementing that tactic and seeing the changes that she's seen in posts since then.
she's busy because she and I have chatted from time to time too, and she actually emailed me and said her site is not vegan, but she stumbled upon an idea for a vegan post that was delivering traffic and not highly competitive. And she's like, Marley, you need to do this. So
Oh yeah, she does that to me all of the
right.
time. That's another perk of being, this is Sarah Cooks from Sustainable Cooks for
Yeah.
everyone wondering who we're talking about. But that's another perk of being her friend. She'll send me keyword ideas all of the time saying, this is not competitive and there's good search volume for it. You need to do it.
Yes, that's
So
great.
awesome.
That's a kind of I think those are the kinds of friendships that are so nice to have, and I think that's I love that this webinar that we did in February was able to cause that to happen, and I like that to happen even more.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd love to get more friends out of this next webinar.
Yes, that's a big deal. I mean, having like-minded individuals, I mean, like I think I've said to you before, when I worked at a company, there would be smart people around the table and I enjoyed having those kinds of meetings. And that's what it starts to feel like when you cultivate food blogger friends that have the same mind and you can, really be inspired by that.
I agree because there's always another way to look at a situation, especially if you're staring at something or thinking about something on your own for so long. You kind of get
Yes.
tunnel vision. And to get a pair of fresh
Yeah.
eyes on things or to have someone to bounce ideas off that could potentially be fresh
Oh,
is so valuable. And we work blogging is such a lonely profession. Like everyone says that, and I didn't really realize that until I became a blogger, but it can be a really lonely profession if you let it. And so I think that branching out and having someone to kind of talk to because your friends won't get it, your significant other won't get it. They just don't get it. Not to say they're not supportive, but it's not like having coworkers. So
yes. So, having people that you can meet and obviously going to a food blogging conference is great too, but you nowadays these online platforms are so nice. So we use a really good online webinar platform that allows great questions, and Brandy and I will be on the screen and sharing our screens and showing actual processes that we use. So it's really great. And I would just say, Brandy, just in follow up, you and I feel like we have done a lot of kind of creative brainstorming on the topic of keywords, and as a result, I've gotten several posts that have moved up that are fairly competitive that have moved up to the top page. I know that you've experienced this as well, and it's a really satisfying feeling. Let me just say this. I find it more satisfying that it has happened because of strategies I've enacted versus by accident.
oh yeah, for sure. Because I do think that in the early days there'd be posts that were there by accident,
Yes.
and to be honest, those are the ones that are more vulnerable to you losing them.
Yes.
Because that has happened to me too,
Yeah.
where I've had posts where I'm like, I don't know why I'm ranking in the carousel for this one, and then
Yes.
you know what, the rug gets snatched from under you, and
Yes.
it's no longer ranking because the content isn't good. And so I agree, and that's why I want to get my site to kind of how you said to make it a store where everything already looks good,
Yes,
so that that
exactly.
happens less.
That kind of makes me think of one time I was on a softball team for the company I used to work for, and I hit what I thought was a single, and I had my hands in the air, and I'm like dancing on the way to first base, and the guy that got the ball had a really good arm, and he threw me out. To me, what you were saying, like, we were doing our happy dance because we end up in position 1, 2, or 3 or whatever. And then they
Yeah,
just get ripped out from underneath us before we even get used to it. So,
exactly,
but
exactly.
when you have these keys to the kingdom, you really, you have strategies you can implement, you know what you're doing, and some things that you can do to help get you back in that position. It feels really strong and powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
I love it.
Yep.
So I'm so excited, Brandy. I'm really looking forward to seeing people register and sign up to be a part of this webinar. So again, go to chopped.academy/smart. And I was just going to finish out, Brandy, by just saying, so what are you looking forward to Q4? Are you looking forward to all the exciting things coming up soon?
I am. I was just talking just a second ago about how I feel like I'm never going to be done. Like my list is never done of
Yes.
things, but I've got this goal, and I'm sure it's probably not going to happen, but I'm setting the goal anyway that by the end of September, like I have 4 big things that I'm working on. 2 of them are products for my site, and 4 things that I'm working on that I want to have done by September 30th so that October, I feel like I can kind of just breathe a little more and maybe even post a little less because I've been working on Q4 content since June. I feel really comfortable about the Q4 recipes that I have out there, and anything I add between now and then will just be kind of icing on the cake type recipes. So I feel really good, but I don't know. I feel like October 1st, something's going to happen and I'm going to be just back busy again and still
Yes.
juggling several different balls. So
Knowing you, you're probably going to be planning content for January 1 or something.
yeah, that is what I need to be doing because January is huge for me. January was my biggest month this
Wow.
year. And so January is huge. But I'm trying to do that kind of stuff right now. But I don't know. I'm ready for Q4. I think it's so exciting. If we have any new bloggers out there who haven't done a Q4, um, get ready. It's
Yes.
so fun. It's so much fun. It's definitely my favorite time of year now that I'm a blogger.
It really is. I mean, the food is good this time of year, no matter what. But yeah, being a blogger and seeing your traffic start to increase and
Oh yeah,
it
I
feels
think
really
that
great. Yeah.
people are entertaining more, people are just cooking
Yes.
more. Like I see a lot of traffic to my seasonal posts during that time, but just my regular evergreen stuff does really well too because I think that people are just entertaining and cooking more.
Yes. They're
And
not
so,
not
it's
outside
so
as
exciting.
much. Yeah, exactly. I love it, Brandy. I always love our discussions, and this one is no exception. So thanks so much for joining me today. I had a really good time.
I did too. Can't wait.
Thanks to Brandi Crawford for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you want to learn more about the Smart Keywords webinar, go to chopped.academy/smart to buy your ticket today. I promise you, it's a game changer. Thanks to everyone for your support of the Chopped Podcast. I've heard from so many of you lately, and I want you to know your positive feedback means so much. Hey, why not take a picture of yourself listening to today's episode or screenshot it and share it with me using hashtag #NamelyMarley or hashtag #ChoppedPodcast. I love hearing from you. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.